I'm really honored to be here tonight. So much of our history in CF has taken place around here somewhere. There's been a lot of buildings that have been built, but I can remember coming back and forth here almost weekly when Dr. Collins and Mitch Drum were finding the CF gene. And it was really an exciting time. And we would come out, and Francis says, I need a new, and he tells this story himself. He says, I knew a new analyzer. And he knew if he would go into the NIH, it would take 6 months. And if we went through the other places, take 6 months. I had one out here the next day for him. He was a tremendous person. And Jim Wilson was another great scientist out here who really has done some pioneering work in gene therapy. But you all are so fortunate, when I was listening and looking at some of that data, to have such a wonderful care center, both on the pediatric side and the adult side. This was one of the first centers out here that really got into the issue of transition. How do we take the patients from a pediatric side and transition them to the adult side? The adults got tired of looking sometimes at the elephants on the wall and in the elevator, and they wanted to be treated as adults. And we know that the adult medicine is very different. And so this has got a great legacy, and to have so many people come out to see me on what night is this? Wednesday night. Wednesday night is an honor, and I'm honored to be here. And I had really fun today to see the resources that you folks have out here. Just really amazing, and I even understand that those resources even extend to the issues of availability of drugs through the Medicaid program that you have in the state, which is very unique, et cetera, et cetera. So I do go around the country, and I do these because I love to do them, and it's fun in my retirement. It's what I enjoy most. I don't have to worry about 560 patients like Shelley. They were patients, employees like Shelley and all those around the country doing a great job, and I really enjoy doing this, and I appreciate the feedback that I get from all of you. We do live in a very exciting time in cystic fibrosis. And one of the slides that was shown was the fact that, our median life expectancy a couple of years ago was about 41 years of age. When this foundation was founded in 1955, the median life expectancy was 5 years. 5 years. Just think about that. And, it was a group of parents that said, hey, we want to make a difference. And it was about 6 families that got together in New York and Philadelphia and Boston. And they said, we're going to start a foundation. We're going to call it the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And that founder or that family was Doris Tolson, who we all should worship and think about. If you young folks here probably have never heard of her. But she really founded this foundation. And her daughter at that point was 3 years old, and they were told that she was probably going to live to maybe 6 or 7 years of old. She's now 64 years old, and she's a grandmother. And she's a grandmother. And Doris is a great-grandmother. So that tells us, that's a great story. That's a great story. We now know that we have a median life expectancy of 41. And somebody showed a slide. In fact, half of our patients are over 18 years of age. But as we go around the country, and the other amazing thing here that we have, and Dr. Simon referred to it, and he mentioned that 2011 we found that drug. Well, that drug had been for Kalydeco, had been about 31 years in the making. Okay, that really, because we didn't know what was wrong in cystic fibrosis. So while we love Vertex, we love folks like you who have supported the foundations in some of the not great times when we didn't know what was wrong and what we had to fix. And that's why we're so indebted to each and every one of you who have been with us. There's some that have just joined us, but you have joined one of the most unique communities in the world, and that is the CF community. Dr. Nasser said I was going to walk to a group tomorrow. And one of the first things I say, if you don't have a community, and I'm talking about not a community of just patients or big givers or just doctors. I'm talking about a real community. You know, you're not going to be successful. So you obviously know I've skipped my first 2 or 3 slides. So is that okay with everybody? All right, thank you, thank you. So, well, I do have the slides here, but that's just to remember. So, you know, but 2011, that paper that Dr. Simon showed, that was an amazing time in our history. Probably the most significant thing that happened to us since the discovery of the CF gene in 1989. Because that showed us, because Dr. Simon, Dr. Nasser have always treated the symptoms of cystic fibrosis. They've used pancreatic enzymes, they've used antibiotics, they've used postural drainage, they've used all those things. But we were treating the symptoms of cystic fibrosis. We weren't treating the root causes. And what we saw in that little blue pill, I always refer to that, there's another blue pill, maybe some of you have heard about. Okay, there's another blue pill. One time I was talking to Pfizer executives, and I said, we want our blue pill to last longer than 4 hours. Well, we can talk about the other things that we were talking about earlier. We can talk about that too, right? So, but I do go around, and so we should be excited. But, you know, ivacaftor was terrific. Or Combi, we haven't got that much improvement at this point. Now, Dr. Simon took my words, and well, we have some that are going to be even more exciting, but I'm going to come back to that. But, you know, but some people have X mutations. Some people have mutations that we really don't know about. And these are therapies that we have to take every day, once or twice a day. Can we ever think about having a one-time cure for cystic fibrosis? Can we ever think about that? Now, I want the person that I saw this a little while ago had a 3-year-old child. I want them to think about that, but I also want everybody to think about that, because that's what we can do. And that's what I want to share with you. And that's what, so that's why I decided, and I've talked to so many people, that where we are today is just the beginning. It is just the beginning of where we want to go. So why am I so optimistic about the things that are happening? Well, the first of all, we have is the sense of community that we have. Again, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. I see young mothers, caregivers here, you know, who probably have children at home. They're here tonight. They don't have to be here tonight. They go to the North American meeting. You know, you all are here tonight. Some of you are donors here tonight. This is an amazing community that we have in cystic fibrosis. And again, it started out with a small family, groups of families that had a vision to find a cure for cystic fibrosis. And of course, Doris, as a great-grandmother, obviously is a great story, but we know that not all of those stories are quite like that. And the other thing is, so we started out this amazing community. And one of the things that Doris and them did is they needed to bring that community together with great doctors, great physicians. And back in 1956, there was only about 4 places in this country that knew anything about cystic fibrosis. Harry Schwachman in Boston, Paul D. St. Ignace at Columbia, people at Albany, and people at Boston, NIH at that point. So they decided to start up a center program. 4 centers. Today we have 170. But we started out, and these folks had a vision to support these centers. And I will tell you today, so they embraced the academic community. Because Dr. Schwachman was an academic. He was at Boston Children's Hospital. So you went from this small community of parents to these embracing the academic community. And what we've done more recently, and I see some of them around the room here today, is we've embraced industry. What we did as an organization a number of years ago is to embrace industry as part of our family. And there are so many organizations that refuse to do that. You know, they look at the pharmaceutical industry as a curse word. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. And what we did in about 2000 is we embraced industry. And it was really that embracing after we understood the basic defect and the gene that really went to the 2011 evolving to our approval of Kalydeco. So again, that is our community today. And it's been a community that has been innovative. We've always looked to be the first, to be the win. I'm sorry I don't have a big M on my slides. I really am. I think I might get run out of town. I was thinking about that. We'll get those next time, okay? We'll fix that, the big M. But, you know, we've embraced this amazing community. And it's a community of innovation. Number one, starting those centers. Now we have over 120 pediatric centers. You saw some of the data that's come from those pediatric centers. We have now over 100, I think, adult centers that grows all the time. That hasn't been easy because at one time we didn't have any adult patients. So we had to build that program. And that's the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Innovative, building. But one of the most important things that this early family and this early community did was to start that patient registry. Nobody had ever thought of starting that kind of a collection of data. And Dr. Nasa showed you some of the data that comes out of that. But I will tell you, when Kalydeco was approved by the FDA, one of the principals there and one of the commissioners there, the commissioner, called me up and said the most important contribution outside of Vertex's collaboration with the CF Foundation to get the drug was the patient registry. Because we had a natural history of this disease. We had a natural history of this disease going back to 1965. So again, innovation has been so important. So we've got this great community. We've got these great care centers. We've got innovation within the care centers. So that's great. That really brought us up to me. Maybe I'll go back to something I said a little while ago. 31 years in the making till we got Kalydeco approved. And how did we get that approved? One of the things we said to ourselves in 1980, you know, the physicians are doing a great job. Quality of length of life was improving. The quality wasn't that great. But we said to ourselves, if we're really going to impact on this disease, if we're really going to have a significant impact, we had to understand the basic defect. You know, it's like in your home. If the furnace is not working, you can't fix it by changing the heat duct. You got to know what has gone wrong in the furnace. And we didn't know what was going wrong in CF. You know, we knew it was a sweat abnormality. Patients were dying at a very young age. We had chronic infection and so forth. But that's all we were treating at that point. That's all we were treating. So we said, could we, if we understood the basic defect. So one of the first things we had to do in 1980, just envision a slide up here, okay, folks, just if we had to do, is to set up research centers. Now, NIH was setting up research centers in cancer. They were setting up in arthritis. I happened to be at the NIH just the year before that, and I was really working, my effort was in diabetes. But what did the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation do? They went out and set up a network of research centers around the country. Our first one was in the University of Alabama. And we went down there, and the governor had lost his child to cystic fibrosis, Fob James. And so he invited us to come down there. And there was a couple scientists that knew how to spell cystic fibrosis, but they weren't involved in CF. But what we really wanted to do is to get institutions engaged in cystic fibrosis research. Bring the microbiologists together with, is John LaPuma still here? Is he here? Did he get in here? Anyway, he was one of the, hey, John back there. You weren't quite that old, but I won't give it away. You know, to get the scientists together, all together with different disciplines. And one of the first centers was at the, well, I said it was the University of Alabama. And they only had a few scientists. But we committed $400,000 a year for 3 years. That's $1.2 million. At that point, we had $700,000 in the bank. We were worried about making payroll. So what happened? One of our mothers, Mary Weiss, who you may have heard of, whose child really developed the 65 roses concept because he couldn't pronounce cystic fibrosis, she went out and raised $1 million gift for us. She went and did it. It was what the people, it was the community that went out and raised it. And we, you know, we took the sweat off. And today there are over 70 investigators at the University of Alabama who are involved in cystic fibrosis, and they're getting millions and millions of dollars from resources from NIH, industry, et cetera, et cetera. So, and one of the other centers was the University of North Carolina. And one of the first things that they did as a center is they found out that chloride was not exiting the cell properly. Chloride could not exit airway cells properly. Does that sound familiar to some folks? That's our working hypothesis. You know, what we're doing with Kalydeco and all these other drugs is getting chloride to exit the cell. And you know, that hypothesis has stood the test of time since 1983. And there were others that contributed to it. So, gee, chloride just couldn't get out of the cell. When chloride can't get out of the cell, water is drawn into the cell, you get the dehydration, you get the mucus, you get the infection. So, you know, what did we try to do then? The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, in its innovation, really went out and tried to find the so-called CF gene. And what did we do again to be able to accelerate and do that? We brought families together that had multiple sibships with cystic fibrosis. So that, you know, you have 2 kids or something like that, or a cousin or something like that. And guess what we did? They held family reunions with phlebotomists. Now, I hope there's no phlebotomist in the room here. But we had to collect blood samples from these families. It's once again the community was willing to have a family reunion with a phlebotomist. But anyway, so that helped in the discovery of the CF gene. And it just so happens that the product of that CF gene was a protein called CFTR. And that protein absolutely regulates the movement of chloride in and out of the cell. So, boy, things were coming together for us. You know, not to have a working hypothesis, and then we have a protein product. So then we got through the 90s, and we looked at things, and we said, wow, could we find some chemical compounds that might open up the CF gene? Opened up this defective channel. That chloride couldn't get out into the hallway outside in the airway, and things were bad in here. So, you know, what did we decide to do? We decided to see if we could then embrace industry even more. So we went to a little company called Aurora Biosciences, and we said, could you find a chemical compound to open up, you know, these defective channels, these defective proteins. And they were doing something called high throughput screening, where they could screen tens of thousands of compounds in a week, where it would take our academics 2 or 3 days to to do 1 or 2 compounds. So industry really could do it in a very, very functional and a quick way. And we went and we first gave them $2 million, and then we gave them $40 million to see if they could find a small molecule, a little blue pill. I don't know what color Orkambi is. What is that? I don't know. I don't worry about that one, the other little blue pills. But I've had more fun with that other little blue pill when going in front of an audience and telling my Pfizer story. So we brought high throughput screening. And we screened about 300,000 compounds. And we found 1 or 2 compounds that we ended up with, being a Kalydeco and Orkambi. I often say to us, the CF community was very blessed that day, because we were doing high throughput screening, and when you got the chloride to exit the cell with the drug, you saw a little blip on a little chart where it had 300 little blips. If that technician had a hangover and she missed that, or he missed that little blip, I don't know where we would be today. So that little blip was, we eventually spent $75 million of the CF money raised by you folks and what you do to take that little molecule and refine it, and the other little molecule, with, we called it VX809. And we did that. Now, why am I telling you this kind of a historical story? Because the most important fact that you need to remember is that we constantly are building. We're building back on that idea that CF chloride couldn't get out of the cell, that we had the gene product, and we had that most important concept in our history, that we are able to use, when that small molecule is used, we can have a very profound impact on people with cystic fibrosis, especially on the issue with Kalydeco. Orkambi has been somewhat of a disappointment, and I'm not going to show you the same slides that Dr. Simon showed, but we know that we have given Vertex another $75 million, a total of $150 million. We started that second generation program, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. We funded them. We knocked the socks off of anybody. And if you ask Josh Boger, who was the founder of Vertex, he would tell you today there would be no Kalydeco or Orkambi were it not for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So congratulations to each and every one of you for being there and being a part of it, whether you're a physician, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a respiratory therapist. And I know I'll miss somebody, and don't take it personally. Sometimes I miss the social worker and I get in trouble, or you, the patients that participate in the clinical trials. So the nice thing is we have now moved, as Dr. Simon mentioned, to a world where we have competition. It's not just Vertex. You know, that's great. We love it that they have molecules. But AbbVie is involved in cystic fibrosis with their small molecule program. Genzyme, which is probably one of the most successful rare diseases companies in the world. Novartis, CFFT, we have our own laboratory now. And so that's really, really exciting. Competition in the field. Dr. Nasser and I were talking at one time, we only had one drug company that was McNeil Pharmaceutical with a pancreatic enzyme. It was another one called Codazyme. And I even forget the name of the company. But now we've got competition. And if I were to show you that slide, you would be heartened by the fact that we have a number of small molecule approaches. But small molecules are exciting. So we've moved, if you look at, what we know about DNA, if you have a question on this, ask your kids. DNA makes RNA, makes protein, which leads to what we know as CF. So what we're doing now, and then you get the symptoms. So we've been treating symptomology. We've been moving to treating the basic defect with these small molecules, but there's still a daily therapy, right? There's still a daily therapy. Can we move back to something else? Can we move back and making the investments now? Because don't forget, it took us 31 years to really get a hypothesis, et cetera. So we don't have to deal with the hypothesis issue. What we have to do now is, how do we open up that chloride channel? How do we open up so chloride gets out of the cell faster, to show the kind of data that Dr. Simon showed? How do we do that? And that's where we are today. The second generation molecules may do that, but they're still daily therapies. Are there ways that we can start to invest now in maybe one-time cures? One-time cures. Can we take the cells out of the patients and be from the lungs and get what we call stem cells? Get what we call stem cells from the airways. And these are the cells that kind of, give rise to all the airway cells. And we're looking at that at this point. Because if we could get those out of the airways, we could start to thinking about correcting those and then putting them back in the airways. Folks, this is not science fiction. This is not science fiction. Now, so let's think about that. So we treat the symptoms. We have a daily therapy. How about the RNA? Remember, the RNA leads to the protein? So there's a clinical trial going on at this point with ProQR, which is a company that was actually founded by a father of a son with cystic fibrosis and has received hundreds of millions of dollars of venture therapy, and has received of good support from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And they're looking at ways to put messenger back into the airways of CF patients. So that's getting closer to the root source. That would still be mutation specific, but if we could do that, you might be able to treat once every 2 months. That's what the goal here is, once every 2 months with the ProQR approach. But what is really exciting for me is, can we think about taking those stem cells and correcting them and putting them back into the airways? Now, maybe you've heard about something called CRISPR-Cas technology. It's getting a lot of press these days because of a lot of patents and so forth fighting around it. But this is a process by which they can take this CRISPR-Cas technology, these proteins, and they can go literally into the cells, and these would be the stem cells, clip out the defective mutation and put in a normal mutation. Take those cells, put them back into the body. So what is the CF Foundation doing about this? First of all, we've had a number of workshops. We're investing in stem cells. In fact, there was a study recently at Case Western Reserve where they've taken stem cells out, they've harvested and put them back in to make sure you can do it safely, put them back into the airways. So we're starting that technology. We're starting to move there. We've invested about $7 million in a little company, which is not a little company, called Editas, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. And they are doing the CRISPR-Cas technology. Vertex has invested $100 million into another CRISPR-Cas technology. Theirs is not all CF, but it's part of a BCF. This is the momentum that we currently have going in cystic fibrosis. So that's why I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the future because I know you're going to continue to raise money for us. Going to have great strides, excitement. And we have resources in the foundation at this point that is allowing us to bring a lot of new innovation things to the CF Foundation at this point, some of which you heard about today. Not only in our Care Center program, but in our Access program. We have a new program called Compass, which helps people to access their insurance, access drugs for CF patients, et cetera. We have resources to be able to do things that we didn't have before. Because I told you about the time we made a commitment of $1.2 million to Alabama. We only had $400,000 or $500,000 in the bank. We haven't had these kinds of resources in the past. But it's through that concept of innovation, coupled with an amazing community, that allows me to be optimistic about the future. And it's allow, excuse me, I need a drink of water here. Is it okay if I don't use PowerPoints? You want me to start all over? Anyway, you know, it's innovation. The foundation has always put itself where no one else has been before. Through the concept of family, through the centers, through the patient registry, through the research development centers, gene therapy, venture philanthropy. I mean, that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. You know, can you imagine a little Cystic Fibrosis Foundation investing $40 million into, you know, a little company called Aurora Biosciences, then $150 million to get us to where we are today? That's what people like you have allowed us to do over the years. So, you know, I get up here and I get to talk about a little bit about the history of it. Try not to use the PowerPoints. But I hope you all are proud of where we are. But I hope that the mother I saw a little while ago that had a 3-month-old is optimistic. But I hope everybody in this room is optimistic, because we will not stop until we have treatments and therapies available to all patients with cystic fibrosis. How did this thing get up here? Someone, hey, good. Hey, I didn't even hit the button. Hey. So, but that's what my thing is here, is dream big, and to say thank you all for what you've done in the past, but thank you for what you're going to continue to do, and to congratulate you for being a part of an amazing center and this amazing CF program here in Ann Arbor. So thank you all very much.